Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Patient First podcast. I am so excited that you're here. And look, I want to start off by just saying, you know, this is obviously a free podcast. I've been doing it for years now, if you include the prior podcast and this podcast. And sometimes I just wonder, what am I going to talk about this week? And so I, have to do some work and it feels a little, like, why am I doing this? I produce tons of content. We do the Upgrade Update, which is a topical webinar that I do every single month. I do webinars, at least one webinar a week that we're doing for Upgrade Dental. We do, courses and all sorts of things within Upgrade. And so I look at this wonderful podcast and sometimes I go, boy, what am I going to talk about this week? And, maybe there's something going on that's irritating me, which obviously I talk about a lot of times. But every once in a while, I'm just excited to show up and talk about something. And today is the day like that. It happened recently with the Data Palooza where I came back and was just invigorated with all the talk of the patient advocates talking about being patient partnered and going on the medical side that bring into dentistry basically through Toothapps. And yesterday, I had the honor of having a leader of a great DSO come to Wyzetta, come to my office, to the Toothapps Central, if you will, where we're creating the technology company that's transforming dentistry. And he wanted to learn about what we were doing. And so this owner of this DSO, who might be listening, if so, hello and thank you for what you do, came out and learned about Toothapps and really looking to solve the integration dilemma that everybody in dentistry has. And this definitely affects patients. And so we're going to be getting there in a little bit. But this DSO had recognized the issue of disparate systems trying to communicate so much that they actually have a position called the apps manager, somebody who manages the different softwares that they put in the practices. And if you think about the mess, if you are a single dentist and you're listening to this, think about the mess that you have trying to manage just the software and the different applications in your own practice. But if you have 3, 10, 50 practices, 100, and if you're growing, if you're acquiring practices, you're creating new ones, this problem grows exponentially. And actually hiring somebody just, just whose sole job is to not create the software, not train the software, just to manage what software is in what locations. What a massive PIA this has become, right? That's why, it's just one of the many issues that we're solving through connected dentistry over here at Toothapps, right? And so we're really taking a new approach where we basically have Toothapps, which is we call it the last integration you'll ever need, where we have to attack this at multiple angles, not just from a technical barriers, which we are doing, but also through the standards, as I've talked about on this podcast. If you want to get involved in dental standards, please write me a note. If you are involved and you think that there's things that we can do to help move things along, I'd love to hear from you. But there's multiple angles that we're approaching this from through education with Upgrade Dental, standardization, both through Dental Standards Institute and the American Dental Association, which is doing great work in this area. And then also through Toothapps, where we're creating the technical integration. So let me back up and talk about this problem fundamentally. It's not just about having these separate applications. Fundamentally, this is a ownership of information issue. The electronic dental record is legally the patient's data, right? And the dentists have to have access and be stewards of this data because we as dentists deliver dental care, right? At Toothapps, we believe it is time to start acting like this. Start giving patients access to their data, start giving dentists access to their data, meaning they need to be able to have data to deliver the best care possible. This is a massive topic. Writing my second book about this topic. I look forward to announcing that release date very soon. But think about it this way: the amount of shiitake that we deal with in dentistry and we just put up with as a patient. If you move from Minneapolis to LA, and you go see a dentist and you say, hey, oh yeah, transfer your records. What a massive quagmire of bullshitaki we deal with, right? So you might maybe fax today, or you call up the office and you say, I have this new dentist. What data gets transferred? Maybe a crappy 4 x-rays and a treatment plan at best. And we as dentists have been okay with this for decades and decades. And we think it doesn't matter because we can't do it. What if that patient just had endo done and that endo's failing? You see an abscess. You don't even know if it's failing endo or if it was just done. So you talk to the patient. Maybe you go through and call the last dentist to see when that endo was completed. Frankly, I don't know if I would have done that. It's embarrassed to say, but I'd probably ask the patient, "Oh, you just had that root canal done. Okay, well, that could have been 2 years ago, and it's actually failing and it's getting worse. What if it was 10 years ago and you find that out? Do you extract the tooth? Well, if you had the notes, you might have seen that the dentist visualized a crack on the pulpal floor, right? What would that do to your treatment planning? You're not going to refer to endo for having a retreatment at that point, right? You're going to extract the tooth and do an implant. So this information, if it's our patients, we look back in our records to see the patient's dental history. If it's not our patient, if it's a new patient, or if it's not in our records, we ignore this information. That time is over. Okay. October 6th of last year, October 6th, 2022, was a significant date in dentistry, in healthcare. It's when the information blocking rule went into effect from the ONC, which means that as a dental patient, as a dentist, as a software vendor, if you need to have access to a patient's electronic health information, and the vendor that has that information blocks you from getting that information, that can carry up to every single incidence $1 million fine. It's called the information blocking rule. It's part of the Cures Act, CURES Act from 2016. So, but the new rule, the information blocking rule, went into effect. New rule, October 6th of last year. So last year in December, after that information blocking rule, and this might have happened since then, I haven't looked at it and I probably should, but three dentists each individually got fined about $15,000 because a single patient requested their records. And it took too long and there was incomplete information. Well, my friends, every single dentist and every single patient, it's going to take too long and not have enough information today because dentists don't even have access to this data. So if you're a patient, realize this is not your dentist. This is not, even if you're the owner of 100 dental practices, you don't have access to this data today. That's what we're solving with Toothapps, right? But so I'm talking about this issue because obviously I'm passionate about it. It's the biggest thing that I think that we need to fix in dentistry to elevate patient care. And so we're talking about this and I'm going on about the information blocking rule, how we're solving this issue at Toothapps and connected dentistry. And this leader, bringing it back to how I started off, this leader from this DSO asked me one question after we're talking about information blocking, after we're talking about the wrongs in the industry that are getting righted today so that we can give patients access to their data, give dentists access to the patient's data to deliver the highest quality of care. This great leader for this CEO asked me this one question, the only question he asked. The CTO, who was there, or the technology officer was asked a bunch of technical questions, which were great. But the CEO asked one question: how would the patient experience this? That was his question. How would the patient experience this? I want to take a step back and just, when he asked me that question, I wasn't thinking about the patient, frankly. I was thinking about the technical requirements here. I was thinking about the standards. But obviously, that's a question I care about greatly, right? This is the Patient First podcast. I wrote the Patient First manifesto, right? Get your free copy around this link, around this video or podcast, or go to patientfirstbook.com and you can get a free copy. But anyway, I digress. Why shouldn't everyone in dentistry ask this for every issue, right? If you're looking at a new composite, ask yourself the question, how would the patient experience this? If you're looking at building a new office, the one question you should be asking, how does this affect the patient experience? That's what it is all about. And DSOs get a bad reputation. And I'm including myself here recently because I sold my practices to one and I'm going through some moronic stuff right now, frankly. And I've gotten down on DSOs recently. But when this leader asked that, it was reminded, you know what? It's not about DSO versus non-DSO. It's not about large group versus small group. It's about leadership, particularly in a group, who's at the top, and how does that get implemented by by those who are working in the organization. Leadership matters, and when you have the leader ask you the question, how does this affect the patient experience, when we're talking about interoperability, when we're talking about, you know, the things that we do at Toothapps, like paperless forms and websites, and how we can help the organization be more profitable, deburden the team members. You can have less people and get more done, and not have an apps manager and all this IT BS that we deal with. Just simplify and make everything. But then he just brought it back to putting patients first. So thank you to all of you in dentistry who are putting patients first, like this great leader from this DSO, and to the patients who are engaged enough to listen to a podcast about dentistry. Just know that, again, these issues are beyond the scope of an individual dentist or owner of hundreds of dental practices. This is a systemic issue in dentistry that, to my knowledge, Toothapps is the only open integration solution that allows every application to integrate together to solve this issue, including not just dental applications, but QuickBooks and payroll companies. So, and we're going to have our patient application ready this year too. So stay tuned. We are going to be empowering patients to have access to their data, much like they do in broader healthcare, mind you, in medicine, right? You have access to your medical chart. You should have access to your dental chart too. You should be able to click a button and give rights to another dentist, and we are empowering that through Toothapps. So stay tuned for more information on that, and for uh, information on the follow up to the Patient First Manifesto that's coming your way later this year too. So thank you very much for being here for the Patient First podcast this week. I'm obviously always excited to talk here, but this was a fun one where I knew exactly what I was going to talk to based on a meeting that I had yesterday. So thanks for all of you putting patients first. I look forward to talking with you right here next week on the Patient First podcast.